gifts that we're able to bring, no matter what they are. I pray that you would be honored and glorified in everything that we do. In the name of Jesus, amen. Periodically, I like to kind of jump in and just take a person in the Bible and just kind of look at his life. So it's not necessarily her life. So it's not necessarily just walking down the scripture kind of in order. It's kind of taking a look. And sometimes you got to put the pieces together through different sections of the Bible. And we've been looking at the life of Elisha, who was one of the great prophets. He was one of the prophets that he came right after Elijah, and he was Elijah's servant. Now, this particular story is where it shows up in 1 Kings 3, is not so much about Elisha in this instance, although he has a significant role in it, as it is about a king named Jephthah, or Jehoshaphat, rather. Two strange names. So Jehoshaphat is the third king after the kingdom of Israel had split. So, just to kind of remind us, can you see that, Mary? You got no audio. It's on the big slider, single slider. Do 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 do. Your hat reminds me of do 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 do. It's all right. We'll live if they don't have it, but check, check, check. Yeah, you got it. Check, check, check. Check, check. All right, we'll just click it up a little bit. All you lovely, yeah, this is, no, these are the mains, and just that's the one that runs it. All right, there we go. Thank you, Mayor, for always enduring me. Okay, so here's what the world looked like back then, the Middle East. So here's the Mediterranean. You all know that by now. Now, what has happened is Israel during the reign of Saul, David, and Solomon is called the United Kingdom. After that, Rehoboam can't hold it all together, and so it roughly just sort of splits into a divided kingdom. It looks something like this. This is a kind of an oversimplification if you didn't figure that out. And so up here is the Sea of Galilee. Down here is the Dead Sea, and this is the Jordan River. Samaria is right here, and this is the kingdom of the capital of the northern kingdom, and here's Jerusalem right here, capital of the southern kingdom. Now, the northern kingdom was not a great kingdom, so there's a lot of idolatry and a lot of stuff. So they kind of bombed through their kings, and they didn't last. They lasted a little over 500 years. The southern kingdom, or Judah, so this is called Judah. This is when they would eventually become Judeans, which is why they're called Jews in the New Testament and even today. And then this is still called Israel. All right, now around here are they're surrounded with these kingdoms. I want to make sure I get this right because it is kind of important to the story. So let me check my notes here real quick. You'd think I'd have this memorized. All right, so we have Edom down here. We have Moab up here. We have Amorites up here. And we have Syria up here. Okay, so they're constantly surrounded by all these tribes that are kind of against them. So there's constant war that's happening. So Jehoshaphat is the third king of the good kingdom. And Ahab at that time is the eighth king of the bad kingdom. And he was the worst of all time. Now, there are 4 stories that mark Jehoshaphat. And to me, I think that they're all pretty interesting stories. And you can read about these in 2 Kings and in 2 Chronicles. The first story, and it's hard to piece everything exactly in order, but I think this is the way the order goes as I interpret it. The first story is Judah is about to be invaded by the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Amorites. So there's this 3-nation group that's coming up against them. Jehoshaphat hears of this, and it's a big, massive 3 armies, and he doesn't know what to do. He's fearful, but he doesn't lose sight of what is happening. So what he does is he offers this really beautiful prayer. And at the end of it, he says, Lord, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. So there's this really beautiful, it's kind of reminiscent of Solomon when he dedicated the temple. So it's this really beautiful prayer. And then everybody kind of goes into this kind of time of silence. He calls for, they're just silent before God. And he proclaims a fast all through the nation. And during this moment of worship, a prophet stands up, and then this really loud, bold voice declares that they're going to win this war without even lifting a hand. You're not going to have to fight this battle. So Jehoshaphat gathers all of the people. He puts the Levites out in front, and they're singing as they're going to war. So what's happening? It's a worship service. It's like a holy gathering, more than it is an actual battle. So he goes and he fights these three nations that have come against him. God sends confusion, something, we don't really know. They all begin to fight against themselves, so that by the time the armies meet, the invading armies have already attacked, three nations have already attacked one another and massacred each other, and Judah doesn't even have to lift up a finger against them. All they have to do is go in and plunder. So it's this amazing victory that kind of marks his career, which is a good career, spanned 25 years, some say 35 years. He strengthened Israel. He rebuilt he put all the worship stuff in place, rewrote all of the scripts and everything that they were supposed to be doing, instituted the temple worship, all that stuff. So he does these wonderful things. Has this great start. But because, as you can see, he's surrounded by enemies, and even at that time, Israel and Judah constantly had border skirmishes. He's feeling insecure, like anybody, any president or any king or anybody that was an emperor would feel insecure if you're surrounded by enemies. So one of the characteristics that he has is he begins to form alliances with all of these surrounding nations. Now, alliances are a good thing, right? So we would all say, yeah, that's a smart political thing to do, except that God didn't want the Israelites, or now the Judeans, to do that, because they were supposed to be a holy nation and separated from all of the other nations. And there's something like God is saying, I'm showing you that all you need is me. You don't need any other alliances. We're good. You just do this thing that I've called you to do. So he kind of learns this lesson, and he's off to a great start. But as is so often the case, you have to circle back and kind of relearn those lessons, don't you? Anybody ever had a time where you go, I learned this thing from God, I just really learned it well, and then you forgot, and you got to go back and relearn it. Well, this is sort of Jehoshaphat's history. So the next story that comes up is Ahab, this terrible king. He was of the house of Omri, and Ahab was married to Jezebel. If you've been around churches, you know that story a little bit. Really just a terrible king and a terrible queen. He wants to go to Syria. Israel wants to go to Syria to capture some land, Ramoth Gilead, a town that had been lost in a treaty. So they had a treaty, there was war, they should have gotten this town back, they never gave it back. So he wants to go to war with the Syrians. So he goes to Jehoshaphat, and he throws him this big party and says, hey, will you come to war with me? Let's go do this, and let's go get this city back. So Jehoshaphat says, okay, we'll do it. So now this is kind of an interesting story. So they gather their army, they're getting ready to go. He brings in 400 prophets of Baal that are going to come in, and he's going to ask them, hey, should we do this, you know? Of course, the prophets of Baal are going, yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to be a great victory. You're going to just have a huge, huge success. But Jehoshaphat, so that's King Ahab asking for that. Jehoshaphat says, is there a prophet of God around here? And Ahab goes, yeah, there is, but he never says anything good about me. So he goes, I don't really want to talk to him. He says, no, we got to go talk to the guy. The guy's name is Micaiah. So they bring him in. He's kind of reluctant. And Ahab asks him, says, hey, are we going to be successful in this battle? And Micaiah goes, yeah, it's going to be fine. Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead, go do it. And Ahab looks at him and goes, really? What's going to happen? He goes, well, I can only tell you what the Lord has told me, but I'm envisioning this bloodbath. You know, Israel is going to be completely destroyed in this. And Ahab goes, see, he never says anything I like. And then he prophesies again of just the complete destruction of what's about to happen. And then he actually says there's going to be a spirit of confusion that's going to go into all of the prophets that are prophesying for this, thinking that you're going to be victorious, but it's going to go against you. So there's all this like little prophetic drama that I find in an interesting story. So finally he says, see, he never says anything I like, so he says, take him back, put him into prison, and we never hear from Micaiah again. Just in case any of you think you want to be a great prophet, sometimes it doesn't work out that well for him. So we never really know what says, just give him bread and water to eat for the rest of his life. Ahab and Jehoshaphat go to war. Ahab says, I'm going to go disguised as a common soldier. You dress in all of your kingly garb. All right, so that seems like kind of a raw deal. But then the king of the Syrians have said, shoot only the king, fight only with the king. So Ahab goes in disguised, but Jehoshaphat, so it's not a very smart thing to do, he goes in dressed as the king. A guy shoots this random arrow, plunks Ahab. Ahab sits in his chariot bleeding out while the war carries on and is almost completely disastrous. And then Ahab eventually dies. The army is routed, and Jehoshaphat comes back, barely escaping death. So he went from having no allies, being completely dependent on God, completely trusting in God, to all of a sudden forming these allies that he wasn't supposed to form. A prophet meets him when he comes back to Jerusalem and says, you weren't supposed to do that, and has a disastrous outcome. Now the next story is, because Ahab dies, his son Ahaziah, who is also a terrible king, they form a little business partnership. So they're going to build a bunch of fleets, a bunch of ships for trading purposes. But God had told him, don't do it. But he turns around and he does it again with this loser king. So they build the whole thing. Prophet says it ain't going to work. So they goes up, and sure enough, all the ships are destroyed. And the prophet comes back. I said, I told you not to do that. And so you've lost the fleet, you've lost the business, you've lost all that stuff. So round number 3 of sort of Jehoshaphat forgetting about what was going on. Now the fourth story, and the one where it kind of applies to the study of Elisha, is right towards the end of his career. And he's a good king, remember. So he's making mistakes, just like we all make mistakes. But he's a good king, and he's a good leader. This time, again, it's Ahaziah's died. It's another king in Israel. It's Ahaziah's brother, Ahab's other son, Joram. He wants to ask Jehoshaphat to go to war with him again. And this time, they're going to come fight the Ammonites. So Jehoshaphat says, okay, fine. Because it's the Moabites. They're going to go fight the Moabites. They're sheep, they're shepherds. So they're supposed to be shearing the sheep and then paying a residual to the king. So they're not paying that. So they're going to go get this money that's owed to them. So he says, all right, which way we're going to go? He says, we're going to go through Edom and go this long way around. So they get together and they travel around, but this is all desert area through here. Because it's so far around, it takes them 7 days longer than they planned. So they run out of water, they run out of food, everything's ready to die, the horse is ready to die, everything's going to die. So this time, Jehoshaphat kind of drives it. He says, is there a prophet in Israel? And they say, yeah, there's this guy named Elisha. So the 3 kings are there. They're going, God just brought these 3 great armies to die in the desert. And so they call for Elisha. And Elisha comes in, and this is characteristic of Elisha, which is why I wanted to do the kind of the study of his life, is he's just bold. Hey, he's courageous. He says exactly what he needs to be said. He's got no fear and very straight. He goes to these kings and he goes, why don't you go talking to Joram? He says, just go talk to one of the prophets of your father and your mother, of Ahab and Jezebel. And they say, no, we want to talk to the God of Judah. So Elisha goes, I wouldn't even talk to you if Jehoshaphat wasn't here. I have no regard for the other two kings. But because you're here, I will. I'll prophesy. So he says, get me a harp. He has a harpist playing for him. And he begins to then see the vision. And he says, you're going to win this war. Again, so kind of it's kind of in harmony with what that first battle is. You're going to win this war, and you're not even going to have to fight it. Tomorrow in the morning, all of the rivers and all of the gullies and everything will be filled with water, so you'll be able to have, water your flocks and your soldiers, and you're going to be victorious. So, just as Elisha prophesied, water is filled up everywhere. The Moabites, they get up in the morning, and with the sun coming up, they see the water all over the ground. They think it's blood. So they think that these three nations have then turned on themselves exactly like it did in this very first example. And they go, all we have to do is plunder. So they come in thinking all they have to do is plunder. And the Israelites, the Israelites and the Judeans and the Edomites, they go in and they have a tremendous victory, and they wipe out the Moabites. And have a great spoil, and then that's the last story. Now, here's why I thought this was kind of a cool thing, is that he does this whole circle back. Now, he's a good king, but the whole story is a very human story, isn't it? You learn this lesson. He had this lesson early on in his career as the king, but he keeps kind of forgetting it. He keeps kind of going back to things that he knows. He's learned to rely on God's strength. He's learned that God is his ally. God is his defender. And he's done all of those things that remind us to be true to God. But then he does what a lot of us do. A lot of us do in our lives. We turn to conventional wisdom. We turn to our own resources. We turn to our own wisdom. We look to God. It's like, yeah, I do look to God, but I look to all these other things too. It's a very, very human story. And what I love about this particular story is that he comes all the way back around to remembering that God is his strength, that God is his vindicator, that God is the one that has the purpose and the plan. And so if you remember at the first story that I told you, he goes before God, he goes, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. And he comes back to that same place where he says, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. And what does that have to do with us? I mean, this is a Bronze Age king that would have resource and power that none of us would, even by modern day standards, it would be an extraordinary, powerful man. What would that have to do with any of us? Well, if you're a worshiper of Jesus, if you're a disciple of Jesus, and this is true with every single one of us, there's a place in your life where you've said exactly what Jehoshaphat said. I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. Every one of us has. Now, sometimes those experiences, like with me, I've got a bunch of them, too many to tell. But there's times in my life that have been marked by the presence of God in such a real and such a palpable way, in a way that brought like solutions and peace. And maybe your story is probably going to be different than mine. Some of us have these really remarkable salvation stories. I don't really have one of those great coming out of darkness into light stories. I was raised in a pastor's home, and so it kind of just was my experience as I grew and I learned, and I do remember a time in my life where my heart was changed. And some of us have that same story too. A lot of us do. And then some of us have these really dramatic stories. We were just at a 180 fundraiser yesterday and heard just some amazing testimony of people that did have these just dramatic, out of darkness into light stories, you know. But for me, there were many experiences that were so powerful that I even made me wonder if I was saved at all, you know, even from the beginning. But what I know is that God works in ways that we don't always get. We always think that our spiritual life is going to unfold in a certain way, and that's the way it's going to be with everybody. And everybody's journey is completely different, or very different. But the thing that we all have in common is that there is this place in this time when we learned to implicitly place our trust in Jesus. And then we forget about that place. And we move from it to trusting ourselves, trusting our instinct, trusting our wisdom, trusting our resource. And usually there's another event, just like in the Jehoshaphat's life, that says, no, I want you to trust me. Now I'm going to share this story partially because I think it's helpful for us, but also because I think it's funny. And Maria shared this with Gigi. We put together a little prayer book for her, and this was Maria's story, so I hope I'm not betraying anything. Maria said I could share it, so I will. So when I was a young guy, 18 million years ago, and I was auditioning, I guess, that's not the right word, candidating. Yeah, you candidate for a pastoral job. You don't audition for it. Same thing. So I was candidating for my very first pastoral ministry job. I had no idea what that meant. I'd never been a pastor before and didn't know anything about it, but I'm candidating for this. So it's a 6-month process. It was just ridiculous. And a lot of just people were wondering, who's this rock and roll guy, blah, blah, blah. So it took forever. So that was painful enough. Then, somewhere near the end of that whole process, they inform us that the board also wants to meet with Maria. Now, Maria did not marry a pastor. She married a rock star. So she's like, I got to do what? And then she finds out like the day or two before the whole thing, she's got to have a life verse. She's like, what in the hell is a life verse? So she's managing this big store, retail outlet, and she asks one of the girls, she goes, what is it? What is a life verse? Does anybody have one? And one of the gals go, oh yeah, I got one, and kind of explained what it was. It says, you trust in the Lord with all your heart. So this is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You can put it up there, Mary, if you got it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, or acknowledge him, would have been the way she would have learned it, and he will make straight your paths. All right, so she goes, yeah, it's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. So she's memorizing it. Memorizing is not her thing. But she's getting it. She's memorizing. She's working on it. So she drives to that terrible day, which I'm glad churches don't do this anymore, because this is a terrible practice. At least I don't think they do. She's driving to the meeting, and she has to pull over and throw up. She's so nervous about this. And then she goes into this meeting, I think, with like 10 men, and they're talking to her about, now Maria's very competent, very capable, and she's answering all the questions. And then finally, the inevitable question comes, so what's your life verse? And she goes, with extraordinary confidence, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And you go, yeah, I love that. Yeah. And what about the next verse? And she goes, there's a next verse? I only memorized the one. So the guy goes, yeah, about in all your ways acknowledge him. Oh, yeah, that part. Yeah, I love that part too. And so it was a little bit of a thing that just kind of got put together, okay? So, but then right after that, some really painful experiences that brought this verse that was given to her by somebody else, really was given to her by God. And a lot of people would have this as it's a verse that's easy to remember, and we've probably memorized it. But her dad died really tragically, like way too young, like a year later. And then there's just been lots of things that have happened in our lives that, and as she's relating this in this letter to Gigi, that she's learned more and more to see this as something that's so foundational in her life because of all the things that she's been through, that we've been through. Even like today, even like right now, as we're speaking right now, things that are going on that are extraordinarily painful, that we can't do anything about, we don't know the answer to, we don't know what to do. But it's this prayer of Jehoshaphat again. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Paul says it lots of different. Paul says, fix your eyes on Jesus. He's the one who started your faith. He said in Philippians, he's the one that started. He's the one that's going to finish it. The writer of Hebrews says, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. This says in just a little bit of a different way, basically the same thing. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Now, if you look at the life of Jehoshaphat, he's got this little event that's happening, first of all, down here, okay? He's got the Edomites, Moabites, and then he's got this thing with them, and they're going to come up here, and they're going to go fight in Syria, and then they're going to get whooped, and he's going to come back over here. And then he's going to try to still make some ships and go off on this little business thing. They're all going to get wrecked up here because he wasn't supposed to do it. He's going to lose all his money. Then he's going to come over here, and he's going to try to fight the Moabites coming through Edom, and he's got all these little things and all these plans, and some of them are kind of working out. There's a lot of crooked paths, aren't there? That is a lot of crooked paths. And God straightened some of them out, but he didn't straighten all of them out. Because in some of them, he acknowledged God. He submitted to him. In others, he did not. So the reason I believe this is so important to look at the lives of these people, that God has put their stories in this Bible for us to remember something, to learn something, is that in all of these crooked, windy paths that each of us are going to go through, ups, down, pain, failures, times that we just know, times we forget, that the first thing we do is in all our ways acknowledge or submit to him. David said in another way, in another place, he said, delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. But only if we delight in the Lord, only if we submit to him, only if we acknowledge him in everything that we do, in the good things and the bad things. So some of you today, if you're like me and you're like Maria, are going through some challenges. Some of you have some things that are weighing heavy in your heart. Some of you may even be here and go, I didn't want to come, but I'm here. The beauty of this little life verse that God gave to Maria is he's not, some of us learned that he's going to direct our paths, but he doesn't direct them. What he does is he takes all the little failures, all those little screw-ups, all those times you forgot, all the times you've wandered far from God, all those little crooked, windy paths, and he makes them straight. That's a whole big difference than him directing it, isn't it? There's not this magic path we follow. We just trust God. We live our life, and in everything that we do, we acknowledge him and delight in him. So wherever you are today, I want to pray for you because I believe it's important that we go back to those first moments. The Beatles famously wrote, "Get back to where you once belong." We go back, right? We go back to those anchor points in our life where we met Jesus in such a palpable way. And maybe you haven't met Jesus in a palpable way. Just keep coming around, you will. You go back to those anchor points in our life so that we remember with clarity again what God has done for us. So if you can bring that memory to your mind, Lord, I just pray right now for some folks who might be struggling with that, might be feeling like they've wandered off a bit, maybe feeling a little bit distant from you. They need a word. Lord, I pray that for each one of us, you would help us do anything, pay any price, make any journey, make any sacrifice to get back to that place with you where your presence is real, your grace is known, your presence is felt daily in our lives, in our homes. There's peace, there's contentment, even if we're going through difficult seasons. I pray for that right now for each person that's sitting here. It's going to mean something a little different for everybody. Help us, God, to stay in that place. I think of that wonderful hymn, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Take my heart, take and seal it for your courts above. Lord, do that in us today. Take our wandering heart, our forgetful minds, the busyness that we have in our life, and every now and again, give us those moments of clarity where we turn to you and we keep our eyes fixed on you, trusting that you're going to make all the crooked paths of our lives straight. I'm trusting that, and I have to be reminded of that, just as each of us do. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. We're going to spend a little bit of time in worship.